and things like that. So the format for today, so the person we're highlighting is Julie Arnold, and I'll talk about Julie in just a minute. So we're going to show a short video that we filmed at her farm this summer. It's about 15 minutes. We're going to stream it. We're also going to give you the link. I know sometimes there are bandwidth issues and you might prefer to just watch it on your screen and then come back. We'll have some Q&A time with Julie, and then we have some discussion questions where we're hoping that many of you will weigh in and share some of your experiences as well. So before we jump in, Nick, you were going to do that little emoji game and then I'll introduce Julie.
Oh, the emoji game. It's going to be so much fun. Okay, we've never done this before, so hopefully it'll be fun. But I just want everyone to know, down on the bottom of your Zoom screen, you should have a button that says reactions. If you click on that, and then there's three dots at the end of that, that should open up like a big group of goofy emojis. So I'm hoping that everyone can find that. So again, bottom of your screen, reactions, the triple dot should give you a lot of different options. So the thing with these, when we click on these, they're going to disappear. So you're gonna have to do a quick look through everybody's little Zoom thumbprint picture, because it will go away in a fairly short amount of time. So here's what the question is, and you're gonna react to it using one of these fun emojis. So we've had a lot of discussion this past fall and winter with farmers around managing people, the joys, the challenges, all of these things. So right now, when you hear managing people on your farm, what is your reaction? And use one of these emojis when thinking about managing people on your farm.
All right, we've got some very, very mixed feelings here. Some people seem very energized. Some people are drinking alcohol. Some people are looking stressed. All right, great, thanks. Okay, so just a quick intro to Julie. Julie, I'll let you introduce yourself too, but I'll just share kind of why we chose Julie. So Julie runs Shepherd Moon Farm, and I actually spent some time visiting Julie this summer because we had a project together. And it just seemed like this summer was really, really hard, right? Like people were exhausted and hot and like burnt out in a way that I have never really seen before. And every time I visited Julie, she just seemed like kind of happy and carefree. And like I would see Julie at things off of her farm. And I just kind of wanted to figure out like how are you balancing your life so well? And so I thought she would be a really good person to highlight for this particular topic. So Julie, if you want to jump in and just share a little bit more about yourself and your farm, then we can share the video.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, Natalie. Hi, everybody. I'm Julie. I run Shepherd Moon Farm. It's in Lindstrom, so it's an hour northeast of the Twin Cities, and it's on the land I grew up on. My parents had 50 acres that I grew up on, and I farm on like an acre and a half to 2 acres of that. And it's a vegetable CSA, and I have been doing it for 5 seasons. This will be my 6th season. Yeah, that's it.
All right, thank you. So with that, Annalie's going to share the video. And you can kind of explain the,
the process of sharing. Well, I'll share my screen and play the video. And it worked really well yesterday. And today it's been working not as well. So if it doesn't play back well for you, I would suggest just muting yourself on Zoom and clicking the link that Nick just put into chat, and you can open it up in a different screen and watch it there. So it's just a 16-minute video, and we'll watch that all together and then come back.
Please feel free to turn your cameras off during this time as well. That might help your video stream also.
Okay. I'll start over. My name is Julie Arnold. I run a vegetable CSA. It's a 50-member CSA. It's about an acre and a half of cultivated vegetables in Lindstrom, Minnesota, which is in the St. Croix River Valley. It's on my parents' land, the land I grew up on. And I work with my brother, and he's 1 day a week, and I also have my partner works in the summertime, and I also hire one person to work part-time. So all the 50 members are required when you sign up at the beginning of the year to work 4 hours on the farm sometime throughout the year. And so I originally did that. I set it up that way so that people would build relationship with me and the land that the food was grown on, to like build connection with the land, and also have a space for community building. So I mean, the CSA model is a cool model, and I also like want to use it as a community building tool. And so it has largely worked that way pretty well. So it's been 6 years that I have been farming on this land, and my mom farmed before me, and we switched to this model when I started. And so we offer on Thursdays as the harvest day for CSA, and we that's mainly the day that people can come out and help. And I mean, I guess we can get to that, but it works pretty well. I mean, if you're actually just looking at like if it's beneficial for me to have people come based on the work that they do, I would say that that would be a net zero because of the amount of work that I put in to sort of set it up. But I'm not farming for like I farm for a living, but it's not because I want to extract from the land or to make lots of money. It is actually to like create a different system, a different model that puts people in the land in the center. And so in that way, like it really works. People come and they feel like they're invested in the farm and in this community, and they build relationship with the land. So in that way, it's definitely beneficial and is doing its job, I guess. So, I mean, some structures that like I don't know that it was necessarily intentional, but just sort of happened is that like I have some like I grew up in Lindstrom, and so there are some older women who grew up on farms who come weekly to harvest. So like they are in charge of washing, and I like get to just rely on them to do that. And so they are able to like run that and bring other people, other volunteers in. So it is very much like the space feels volunteer focused, I guess, on those harvest days especially. And then I am able to rely on the people that work with me too, to run different stations, I guess. But the other thing is that I think that it really helps to have people on harvest day, because then they're not just coming to weed. That is the most fun job on the farm. You really get the benefit of, yeah, I mean, it's the most fun. So people really feel like they're contributing, and yeah, I think that helps a lot. And then I usually have a weekend, like several weekend days that are opportunities for like larger member work days. So we just had like a fall potluck and member work day where there were 40 people that came. And I mean, in that case, we actually we got a lot of hoops built for the hoop house, and we pulled out the tomatoes and like actually got a lot of work done that would have taken me weeks and weeks. So that was super useful, I think, to have like a day where people could feel like they were contributing, and it was really helpful work-wise for me. I think maybe 4 or 5 years we've done it this model. So it's been a little while. And I'm thinking that in the future, I would like love to continue to imagine what it looks like to build more community. I just talked to a board member of the CSA, and he was saying that it might be cool to have like uh, a buddy program with the CSA. So like a returning member paired up with a non-returning member. That doesn't really have to do with the work share part, but it does have to do with the community building. So they could come out together, they can share recipes. So I'm thinking about that might be really cool because retention, I mean, the returning members, that's an easy one, but the first year members, it's hard to retain people because it's such a different way of cooking. And I also just like, I want to keep imagining and thinking about what it looks like to give people access to this private land. I am aware that like I have incredible privilege to have access to that. This was my family land and I have access to this, and I don't like, I think in the future we shouldn't have private land ownership. I don't think it makes sense. So what does it look like to have more people on this land and create space for that? I don't have specific ideas, except I'm like going in a direction that I, think makes sense, and I'll keep sort of trying to figure out ways to have more people feel comfortable on the land and contributing to growing their food. Yeah. I think there are definitely work days where it feels like it's less than net zero, I guess. Like that still happens, and I am careful about what projects I have people work on, and to both like make people feel like they are meaningfully contributing and also not doing something super complicated that needs a lot of oversight.
So what are some of those projects?
I mean, like building the hoops was great. Pulling out the tomatoes was great. Like pulling out plants. So a lot of the fall stuff seems really great. The earlier spring planting and weeding can be hard because it's hard for people to, well, both planting requires some technique and also weeding. You might pull out plants in the early spring. So it seems like once things are established, it's a little bit easier to have people around. And then as far as harvesting goes, I feel like most harvesting is pretty easy to skill people up to be able to harvest things. I don't feel like I mean, if things are more challenging, I end up doing them anyway. So, and that's not a huge deal. There's plenty of things that are easy enough to do harvest-wise. And I will say also that it's definitely how do I say this? Like there's a trade-off. I want to build community and have, like, for instance, children have access to this space, and so I, like, for the work share trade for families, I usually have some leniency. I mean, like, I want kids to be able to experience this, so I know that is not gonna, like, the parents of that family are not gonna meaningfully contribute, and that is okay, because I would rather have the community building, I guess. I have planned many summer work days when it's like 100 degrees. I mean, like, I don't intentionally plan them on the 100-degree days, but any work day in July is a no-go. I mean, people already, I don't feel like have much stamina for hard physical labor, but especially when it's really hot. So the fall work days are gold. That seems to be, I mean, like, I've canceled many work days because of heat. And I've also gone through with them, and it's been hard. It's been hard for people. People have not a super positive experience because it's really challenging physically.
Do you think you'll shift in the future to like?
Oh, I guess this isn't a tool, just noticing that I remind people of their required work hours, but I don't dog people about their work hours because ultimately it's for connecting with the farm, and I don't. So people sometimes feel stressed about, like, I want to be a part of your CSA, but I don't think I can do this. And like, that is okay. It's ultimately just to build relationships. So yeah. I have a board because it's just a member board, and the board is to help guide decisions that I make on the farm. So it's a mix of people from from the cities and from Lindstrom, and yeah, just sort of like a cross section of members. People are new and older, and they serve like 3 years usually on the board. And then we meet a couple times a year and we talk about like what went well, what could we share ideas about what could be better. And it's like really helpful for me to, as like a person who, I mean, I'm the sole person who runs the farm, so I bounce ideas off of my family, but I don't have, it's really helpful to have members who are invested and who want to see to it that things go well for them too. So yeah.
What sorts of decisions do they help you make? Is it things like, do we want more broccoli next year?
Yeah.
Is it, yeah, what are the types of things the board can weigh?
Yeah, I mean, that is something. I mean, when I switched to having a model that was, you know, half shares every week instead of half shares every other week, but the board helped me decide that. It seemed like that's what people wanted, was more frequent vegetables. Yeah, and what is grown, what's shared in the newsletter. They help me with marketing, thinking about how we get the word out. They usually like recruit a lot of members. The board does. They're like, speaking of super volunteers, they are like some super volunteers, really invested and really care about the farm doing well.
So that's totally a volunteer.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
How did you find those people? Were they just some of your initial members that seemed really invested?
Yeah, they were initial, interested members, and then I have, you know, some of them are like, you know, have been friends of mine, and some people I sort of ask out of the blue because I want some new members who, you know, this may be, I mean, like, because some people on the board, CSA is totally a new thing for them. They were not. I mean, they're like converts or something, you know. So it's really helpful to have their perspective because I feel like I'm in this other, like I could use any vegetable all the time, you know. It's useful to have that perspective. So yeah, it's cool. I mean, CSA is a resilient model. I think like one of the things I love about it is that like during the pandemic we weren't, I mean, CSAs weren't like, I don't know, tilling in all their peppers or killing all their hogs or whatever. Like I heard many stories of farmers doing that, and we have direct relationship with our customers, so we're able to move produce in a way that there's not a middle person. So it's a more resilient model. And as capitalism is collapsing, and you know, like I mean, that is what's happening. It makes sense that we would have models that are more resilient and based on community and care for each other. So I think that there's a real future for CSA. I also think that like right now there's a huge challenge that like the onus of buying good food is on the customers or the farmers, like taking a hit and you know, charging less for it. So I would love for more support from the federal government and from the state to like actually make this an affordable model for access for more people, because that's really like that's huge what's in the way for this to be a model sort of broadly. I mean, this is just like another piece of having my parents live on the land, is that like I don't actually live here full time. I leave physically, I leave the farm on the weekends, and that is enormous for like I know that I would work all weekend. I mean, at least part of the weekend if I was here. So that's huge to have separation, but that's like a real privilege. So I would say some other things are that what are some other things? I don't know, man. I really try to not make this my I mean, it's like such a big part of my life, but I try to have other things going on in my life. Um, yeah, it's about how much land do I have to grow on to like make a baseline living. I'm not, and it's interesting because like I feel like I get a lot of questions from people about there's an assumption because of capitalism about like just grow, like of course you're going to grow if you're doing well, you're going to grow, and that just like maybe doesn't make sense. My brother is thinking about coming into the business, and so we are talking about like what does it actually mean um, to like be able to live off the farm for both of us. And if there was another person that came in, that would be the same sort of question. So um, I also like yeah. So the future for that looks like I would love to provide, like I would love to have winter storage, and we'll be growing more apples and doing winter CSA. I feel like that's like I'm excited about having food in the winter, I guess, for people. Yeah, but the scale I do, the other reason I like this scale is because it requires limit. I'm trying to do no or limited tilling, and it requires little mechanization. And it's like just at the, you know, it's an acre and a half to 2 acres. It's like just at the cutoff really that we can do everything. It's like a human powered thing. So yeah.
Right. A big thanks to Julie for doing the interview. Big thanks to Natalie for being the interviewer, and Kobe Danzenberg, who's not with us, did the video. So thanks to Kobe, wherever he is right now, for putting the video together for us all to share. I know that a few folks hopped in while we were rolling the video. So for those of you that did just get here, welcome. So the second part of this format is to do some Q&A with Julie, who is with us, which we're lucky to have. Here's, I think, the best way to do the question and answer. It's how we've done it in the past, and I think it's a good way to do it, is a couple options for you. If you want to raise your hand using the reactions function on the bottom of your screen, that will put folks in order so that Natalie and I can call on folks who have questions. If you have a question that you want to put into the chat, you can do that as well. And then we can kind of monitor those and ask those over to Julie, or maybe lump a few of those together. The one thing that I want to ask is, like, as you're thinking about questions, this first part of the question and answer period, it'd be really good if your questions were more broad, that would benefit everyone. If you have a really specific question about your situation and your farm, that's totally fine too. Just going to ask folks to kind of hold those a little bit towards the end, and we'll break up for a little bit of time at those end to ask some really specific questions. So again, thinking about formulating questions that can benefit everybody who's here on the call. One quick reminder, one more time, you can use the raise your hand function in the reactions. You can put your question in the chat. Natalie and I will call on folks to take themselves off of mute, and then we'll go that round. So Julie, I'll have you take yourself off mute, which it looks like you already are, so you're ready to go. Before anyone asks a question, Julie, is there anything you want to like add after, you know, making a video this summer and then now seeing it, you know, how many months later? Is there anything you want to add into the conversation before we open the Q&A up?
I can't think of anything.
Totally fine. Cool. All right.
I'll just quick mention that we are recording this part just because some people who couldn't be here asked for the recording, but we're going to turn that off as soon as we shift to discussion. So we're only recording this Q&A part.
Thanks, Natalie. There's a question in the chat, a quick one, about how many different crops do you grow, and do you add ones, take some out each year? How do you do that?
I don't know how many different crops I grow. I'm sure other CSA farmers can share that. A lot, to have a lot of variety for CSA members, and I do switch out every year. There have been some. It's fun to shop for new varieties when things don't, you know, I take notes on what didn't go well or what went well. And I like to have multiple varieties of depending on the crop, but like multiple varieties of broccoli and multiple varieties of cabbage, and because depending on the year that changes. So some varieties I stick to because they have been steady for years, and some I will switch out. And there have been some great farmer resiliency forums in the past that we've shared some great shared some varieties that has been really helpful too, actually. Mhm.
Julie, I'm going to throw a question in the hopper while we're waiting. How do you manage the volunteers from a management? I guess, do you have like a computer program, a spreadsheet? How are you managing like when folks are coming so you don't get too many at one time? And, you know, I'm thinking about harvest days. I can imagine a few would be helpful, but 50 wouldn't. So just how do you manage that part of it?
Yeah, especially with the pandemic, I felt like that was I tried to cap it at, you know, I wouldn't have any more than 10 or 15 people on a harvest day. And it just ends up being a lot of emails on my part. I do have a spreadsheet that I like keep track of who's going to be there, but people like will both text me and call me and also email me when they're coming. So it's a lot of communication. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
Liana's asking, how do you pass off information about how to actually do things like weeding correctly, harvesting, bunching, stuff like that to volunteers and employees? And any recommendations you have about standardizing that process through SOPs or anything else?
Yeah. So it depends on what we're harvesting. Sometimes I will have, and how many people we have, because sometimes I'll do a training with with the few employees that I have before the volunteers come, and then they each run a team. And then my main job, like during harvest days and when we have big groups of people, is to harvest the challenging things and also check in on everyone constantly. So it's a lot of running around for me. And I don't have any sort of standardized process. It's all sort of here, but people who have my partner Jason has been working on the farm for multiple years now, and I have other people that have returned, volunteers who return. And so there's a lot of knowledge that other people carry as well that I don't have to keep training, which is really great.
I'm going to grab Dan's question on the chat, Skylar, and then we'll hop over to you. But Dan's is like really related here. So in the chat, Julie, Dan was just asking about, and you kind of touched on a little bit, but maybe going a little bit like more difficult harvesting crops. So peas, watermelon, sweet corn without opening it up. Can you just talk a little bit about training folks with those? Also within weeding, like if it's early stage weeding, how do you teach people like, hey, that's actually the carrot, not the weed?
Yeah. I mean, I would love to hear other farmers' opinions about this, because I honestly struggle letting go of harvesting some of these things. It will take me maybe like halfway through the season until I like want to train an employee who's worked with me for a while in harvesting sweet corn or some of those things. So I don't know. I feel like I don't tend to have volunteers harvest those harder things, and I wait to see. I like people to have a little bit more experience before training people into more challenging things. Mm-hmm. So they know what to look for, and I can see that their eyes are trained to look for certain things, I guess, to be observant and stuff.
Thanks, Julie. I saw Natalie typed into our notes that is a question we will bring into the discussion when we're all talking later, is like, how are other folks doing that? Skylar, thanks for being patient. You had your hand up, go for it.
Yeah, so my question for you, Julie, is like you said, knowing which day is your harvest day kind of helps you just save all of that harvesting for that day. And it kind of probably helps you like organize your schedule and your week. You don't need to think about harvesting other days quite so much, except for special stuff. Do you find yourself having a certain day of the week dedicated to like weeding for that matter? Or like, you know, do you have a standard week where you're like, this day we're going to be weeding, Tuesdays is our weeding day? And, you know, like, do other days have that same significance for other jobs, or are those other chores around the farm that are regular? Or are those just kind of more like ambiguous schedule wise? You just kind of chip away when you can.
Yeah, I do have, I mean, Mondays are usually the weeding day, and also it depends. I mean, the spring is also is a little different because of planting, so things are subject to move because of that. But yes, otherwise we do have like a pretty. It's pretty clear that Thursdays are our only harvest day, and Mondays are usually our weed day. Mhm. It's useful to have that just that time. You know, those are set. Mhm.
All right, we've got one question from Geraldine that I think maybe we'll hold to the end, but make sure you two can connect later. So we've got one from Tim here. How long did it take you to find 50 members?
Well, I feel like I started 6 years ago I think my mom started 10 years ago, and she had like 5 members, and it slowly built up. And when I started 6 years ago, it was 25 members. So every year we had been pulling in 5 or 10 more members. So it's definitely helpful to build slowly like that, because it's easier to get 10 members than 50 members outright. And then retaining, I mean, I talked about retaining people, but that's a huge challenge. But once you have a base of people, I actually don't know what the percentage is, but the retention, is something like 70% probably. So that's huge once you have a base.
Thanks, Julie. Another specific question in the chat, which I'm just going to hold for a second, unless there are not any other questions at this very moment, then I'll ask it. Any other thoughts, questions folks are having? Here's another one. Actually, I'm going to go with the raised hand. Jason, go for it.
Hey, Julie, thanks for sharing with us. One thing that I'm thinking about is that if you go into thinking that volunteers are just sort of free labor, you can be disillusioned by the amount of work that it requires to bring them onto your farm. So can you talk about your experience of kind of reconciling the work that's involved in inviting volunteers to your farm versus the benefit that you derive from having them come to your place, or sort of how you settle out that the workload that's required to have volunteers come?
Yeah. I think it's taken me a little while to like feel excited about the work that it takes to have volunteers on the farm. I think initially it was like really stressful on a harvest day that's already so stressful. Why would I be doing that? But it's been useful to like continually have I know that a goal of mine is to have more people on the land, and so like working towards that is just really helpful in reconciling that, I guess. To like continually remind myself that is actually my goal. It's not to be a robot and like just have more food for people. It's connection and people. So that's helpful.
Okay. Elston, you've got your hand raised. Do you want to ask a question?
Thank you, Julie, for all of your wisdom. I'm curious about, it sounds like it's been a process getting to this stage of like 6 years of seasons, and I'm curious about like your visions and what you want to happen in the next like 5 or 6 years, and what it'll look like to continue to build community in that way.
Yeah. I feel like I'm maybe at a stage where like my feet are under me a little more, and I would love to like be able to invite more people on the land. I had mentioned that in the video, but incubating or some relationship to that, I feel like would be a cool next step for me. I don't own the land that I'm on, and I am, my parents own the land. So it's also like in relationship with them. I have been moving them politically to like, and you know, like continuing to stay connected with them to figure out how to like, how do I use the space that's actually not mine, to like invite more people on it. So it's I'm working with other, yeah, there are a lot of people at the table, I guess. So
Thanks,
that
Julie.
complicates things. Go ahead.
Marcus, you have your hand up. You want to throw a question into Julie?
Yeah, I was wondering, you mentioned that you do hire someone on seasonally part-time, and I was wondering, like, have you had a lot of turnover with that position, or do you have people coming back? And like, what are the like sort of community aspect and like relationship building aspect of that like seasonal position is like for you and the farm?
Mhm. Yeah, I haven't had, so most of the people that have worked for me have been aren't from Lindstrom, like don't live out there, and so they will do it for a season and then move back to the city, or you know, move on to the next thing. And I have had a little, like some local people. I had one year where a local person worked with me, and so he's come back a little bit, not full time, but you know, will come back and help. And the relationship building is, I mean, I've been great. Like I've been lucky that the people that I have found have been like friends of friends. And so it's been like a pretty easy, they sort of, we eat meals together and we live on the farm in the summertime together. And so that has been, I've been lucky. I mean, it's a hard thing to ask people to like both live on the farm and work all the time. You know, you are each other's community a little bit. But it's been good so far.
Julie, there was a question a little bit earlier in the chat about CSA model being amazing, but also really challenging. And just curious, are there certain parts of the CSA in general that you find harder than others, and perhaps in comparison to other models in which one might sell vegetables?
Yeah, I think there's, or not, I don't think there is a lot of communication with CSA because you're talking to every single customer. So that's both great and really time consuming. And also sometimes I feel bad that I'm pushing vegetables. There's a way that CSA members are like, oh my gosh, more vegetables, you know, oh no, because they're not choosing or buying the things each week. They're sort of given something that, just a box of things that they don't have a choice over. So that I feel like is challenging, because yeah, that's a silly place for me to be in, but that definitely happens. Yeah, those would be the main things, I think.
All right, I think we'll do maybe 2 more questions and then shift to a broader discussion. So there's one in the chat here about, like, do you have volunteers sign liability waivers, or are there any other ways that you handle liability with so many people?
Mm-hmm. I don't, but would love to talk to other people that do. I feel like I could learn more, definitely, about all of that liability. I haven't run into any trouble, but it could happen anytime.
And that's something where we will probably direct people to farm comments. Like if people want to share what you're doing, that's fine. But like when you get into those legal kinds of questions, it's better to maybe refer to the lawyer people.
The experts, yeah.
Okay. Is there maybe
Did
one
you just list
final
a specific resource?
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat here. So Farm Commons, thanks, Annalie just posted it in there. They're sort of like the hub of legal resources for farmers, and they really focus on specialty crops. They're based in Minnesota. So that's a really good place to go for things like waivers and podcasts and webinars all about topics that are related to, they especially focus on people management. and all of the legal and regulatory pieces of that. Okay, why don't we take this last question here, which is, what was your first year like, and some of the challenges that you had, as well as some awesome things that you experienced?
I feel like my first year was way more stressful because I was figuring out so many things. I mean, it's not like I still have to figure out plenty of things, but the first year was it felt a lot riskier, I guess. And so I felt really worried that I had taken all this money from people and I wouldn't be able to provide. That felt really risky. Yeah, so I think not. I still feel. I mean, there's definitely still risk, but I have more years of experience to go back on. So there's just like more knowledge that I know certain things at work, and I could still have a weather event or whatever other things, but I know more. I grow more food just in case, and I know what that means. Like, what is more food for 50 people or whatever. So there are so many things that I'm just more sure about. And something awesome beginning thing that was awesome is that it's just like it's a fun job. So that was awesome. Yeah, I love the work.
Thanks, Julie. We are going to take one more question. There was a hand that snuck up right before we said we were going to take the last question. So Jason, over to you for the last question.
Well, maybe you just answered it, Julie, but Natalie made mention that every time she saw you during the summer that you maintained a joyful disposition, and we're in kind of challenging times. So what do you think that you do, or what have you arranged in your life and world that allows you to have that buoyancy?
I mean, I think maybe one of the things is that I get a lot of joy from both the work but also the people. And one of the pickups I do in Minneapolis is at the place I live in Minneapolis, and so I get to see like 35 people or more when they come and pick up every week. And that's like, I mean, after a 12-hour day, I mostly want to lay on the ground, but it's so great to be filled up by that connection. So I think that's a really life-giving thing. So that goes back to like having a lot of volunteers and stuff too. It's so hard and it's like so beautiful. And like focusing on that part is really life-giving.
All right, thank you for your really good question.